not your ass. You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you. Now get up.
Good evening, friends. It's Friday! Time once again for another informative episode of Hobbservations on the roads to liberty, part of the Think Liberty Network. That's think-liberty.com for all of your liberty-based podcasting needs. Go there, subscribe, become a fan. We're not the only podcast, but I'd like to think that we are the best. Joining me tonight is local man of mystery and infamy. Brett Hendrix was recently featured in some local media for he went to a protest down at the state capitol. There was some legislation that was onerous and repugnant to the Constitution, and he decided that a right not exercised is a right soon lost. So he showed up with his web gear, his rifle, his helmet, and his Hawaiian shirt in style. Brett, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing pretty damn good. How are you doing, man?
Oh, it's always a good night when I'm doing a podcast. So let's do a little bit of background on you before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the show tonight. Tell us who are you, where you're from, what you do, anything that you might be willing to tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm from. I was born in Norfolk, raised in Stanton, Nebraska, on a farm. I didn't participate in any of the farming because it was owned by an actual farmer, so we just rented the land. And went to North Dakota 2 years, came back down, lived in Omaha since, joined the Marine Corps, was 7242 direct air support. Basically, I was an ASNO, air support net operator. Got out, started working at a bar, and pretty much got it. I met a guy who was a 3%er, and he talked to me from there, and that's when I really started getting into politics and seeing how screwed up our country is constitutionally. And from there, I've just been doing my research, keeping in contact with as many people that are patriots across the entire United States. And here I am now, and just trying to exercise my First and Second Amendment right, and didn't really want to be a threat, I guess, but it came off that way.
Yeah, they'll take any opportunity they can to spin the media narrative whatever way they can. Now, we were supposed to have a couple of the other guys that were with you, but I guess they must have pulled out at the last minute. No big deal. We'll just you and me. It'll keep people from stepping on each other. That's a kind of a problem that we have when we have more than one guest on here. So okay, so the background of the protest. I guess it really wasn't a protest per se. It was more of just testimony time at the Capitol before they go to vote on legislation. And the bill was introduced by, and for anybody out there that's watching that doesn't know, this is a Nebraska thing. This isn't a national thing. This is state level legislation. It was introduced by State Senator McAllister, and it was LB 869.
LB 816, and 816. Then they also 2 days or 3 days prior introduced LB 58.
Yes. So prior to that was LB 58. That's the more infamous one, and also probably the more dangerous one from a preservation of rights standpoint. LB 58 is Senator Moorefeld's legacy bill, his red flag law that he's, this is the hill that he's wanting to die on, apparently. And LB 816, which was introduced by Senator McAllister. Here in Nebraska, we have a handgun purchase permit system. So if you want to buy a handgun, you have to have a handgun purchase permit. It's $5. You usually get it the next day. It sounds bad on its face, but it has the added benefit of you get to skip the background check anytime that you get a gun. So it's got its pros and its cons. I mean, one, it is, you have to beg the state for permission, but on the other hand, you don't have to have somebody call up the NICS hotline every time you buy a gun. So McAllister's bill, he wanted to add semi-automatic rifles and shotguns to the list of things that you needed this permission slip to get. You'd also have to have what was it? It was like a waiting period, and he also wanted to extend the amount of time that law enforcement could withhold that permission slip. You go in, you pay $5 to your local sheriff. They run a background check. You can stop in the next day usually to get it. They are obligated, if you pass a background check, to hand that over within a certain amount of time. McAllister's bill wanted to lengthen the amount of time that they could get, which, it's not that bad. It's an inconvenience, but it's not like we're going to kick down your doors and take your guns. It's more of a principled inconvenience that you protest. But the rest of it, needing the permission slip to buy semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, that's where the rub is. And then of course, like you said, LB58 was a couple of days prior, which is the really bad one.
Yeah, it was the red flag law, which it has a lot of may, and anything that says may in a law that's abstract like that, dangerous, very, very dangerous. Anybody could be part of that. That could be even considered like churches and people like that. And it's just something that Nebraska would, nobody would expect Nebraska. So.
Right. The thing about Nebraska that seems to pass over a lot of people's minds when people think about Nebraska. Nebraska is a geographically, it's a fairly large state, but population-wise, it's very small. We got 3 representatives in the House of Representatives. If that couldn't, hopefully I'll be one this year. I'm running this year, so that'll be that'll be interesting out here in CD3. But we only have three people in the House of Representatives, and much like Illinois, Nebraska is large geographically. It's very sparsely populated, except for a couple of large urban centers that basically set the tone for the entire state. And also, much like Illinois, those urban centers are very left-leaning. They have universities in them, so they skew the politics in a way that is very. You wouldn't think that the state would lean that way, but because of these urban centers and because the seat of governance is in one of these urban centers, Nebraska has a surprising deal of high taxation and silly shit like this. This bill that Moorfeld is putting out there. So I've jacked jaw about what I know about LB58 and 816. Why don't you tell us how you became aware of them and what made you decide that you were going to get suited and booted and run on down to the Capitol?
Well, I got suited and booted on my own accord just because I was like, it'd be funny, because I figured there'd be a lot of other people showing up like that. I didn't get the memo that nobody was bringing their guns. So as for who actually notified me, I was focusing on Virginia myself. I was trying to help push that as hard as I can so that they wouldn't have to suffer through that kind of crap. And now look, they already are. I tried my best. I spread the news around as far as I could, but I actually heard from Zach Ringer, who's going to be running for 47. District 47 in Nebraska. So he got 12,500 signatures to take down LB 816. So he was a really, really big part in trying to battle these anti-gun people, because you got to imagine Lincoln and Omaha are so far away from the rest of Nebraska. A lot of people can't make it out from that far. We had a few people from Scotts Bluff, but a lot of people are busy, the farmers, and with how bad the government taxes our farms, a lot of those people are bankrupt and are pretty much getting their land stolen from our own government. It's a giant nightmare of taxation. And there was a bill actually proposed to eliminate all taxes except for the consumption tax, which was shot down. And that is disgusting because those farmers, they deserve so much more. They're the ones that feed us. You know, they're the ones that feed the whole, if not just the U.S., plenty of the world, you know. And it's a disgrace just on that part because food is important. You got to eat.
Yeah,
You got to eat.
everybody's got to eat. Yeah, it's I was not watching the consumption tax bill as closely as I probably should have. I didn't know it had already been shot down. That is very disappointing to me because when I first learned about it, ironically enough, I learned about it at a gun show here in Grand Island. I saw a guy handing out petitions to lower property taxes, and we got to talk, and I told him, hey, I'm going to be running for House of Representatives. I told him who I was with, and we got to talking a little bit, and he told me about the consumption tax bill, and I that my ears perked up. Whenever you're talking about this doing away with these layers and layers of the kooky tax structure that we have. It's like thicker than a stack of Bibles. And it's just this Byzantine mess that's confusing. And a lot of people think it's confusing on purpose so that they can entrap you in any number of, tax fraud and all the other crap that they can get, but giving them the benefit of the doubt that it's just a bunch of legalese just for the sake of being legalese. It's still way too complicated for the average guy that just doesn't have hours and hours of his life, because some people are, like you said, farming, doing their normal regular person jobs, and they don't have time to take a look at a tax code that's as tall as they are. So doing away with that and doing a consumption tax I think would be ideal, if not nationwide, then at least at the state level. Give it a shot.
I mean, the founding fathers were angry at a 3% tax.
Yeah, 3% tax on tea, and a consumption tax for the people who are out there that are always bitching and complaining about the rich people not paying their fair share. A consumption tax should be right up their alley because rich people are always buying shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more money you have, typically the more money that you're willing to spend. And if you're out there buying like $100,000 sports cars, the taxes on that have got to be outrageous.
Oh yeah.
Well, anyways, we're getting kind of off topic here. We're talking about LB 58 and 816. So LB 58 is Moorfeld's bill, which is I read through it, and it's one of those things that it does offer some more protections on the due process side than some of the other state level bills that have been floated in other states around the country. But it's still one of those bills that it's
They're
mainly
kicking down your door still.
Right. Exactly. They are coming to your house, and they are going to confiscate your legally acquired and constitutionally protected property. Yep. Based on nothing more but hearsay. And that is the part that not that part. The part that probably bothers me the most is that the punishments for a false reporting are, last time I read the bill, this might have changed, but last time I read the bill, they were nowhere to be seen. Maybe a small fine or a slap on the wrist misdemeanor type of thing, where, in my opinion, if Moorfeld really wanted this thing to go through, I would probably add in something like a false or malicious report will carry with it something like a felony jail time.
Yes.
You would want to. You're wasting the court's time. You're putting a cop's life in danger. You're putting a citizen's life in danger, and you are potentially removing somebody's constitutionally protected rights. You would think that a malicious report would carry with it, with that much on the line, that you would have some type of incentive not to go out there and red flag everybody that you disagree with, but those protections aren't there, at least as far as I know.
And I mean, the bill doesn't deserve to live anyway, period.
No, it doesn't. But
Period. It's against the Second Amendment, as are any bill against the Second Amendment. But
right,
I digress.
exactly. Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate and spitballing out here that if Moorfeld was serious
More
about
careful.
yeah, and all serious about getting this through, and also serious about what he says that these things are supposed to be for. He says these things are supposed to be for suicide prevention and for domestic violence prevention, which there's if you're already convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor, you'd forfeited your Second Amendment rights. Yeah, so I don't know, like you're going to make it even more illegaler or something.
And I mean another thing on that point with the suicide rates, it's already been shown across the world. The more guns you take, the higher the suicide rate becomes.
Yeah,
And it doesn't require a gun to actually take your own life.
No, and that there's many reasons for that. It's not more guns, less suicide. I think it's when you get to the point that the government is big enough that it's disarming you, it's also probably taxing you into the poorhouse, and then most people just can't climb out of that and see no other way out but to jump off a bridge or hang themselves or something. So yeah, that's Moorfeld's little bill, and he is just, pun intended, he's up in arms about this. And when you and the other two guys that showed up armed at the State House, it was like watching the Muppets run around.
Yeah,
because guys armed with assault weapons.
Yeah.
I hate.
I mean, I could have brought a shotgun, like
yeah,
either or.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit more palatable to their tender sensibilities, but yeah, it's not a sight that you see in Nebraska. Nebraska is, like I said, it's very rural, very peaceful, more or less state. There's not a lot of the political brush fires because despite being a largely rural red state with a couple of tiny deep blue urban centers, Nebraska is a very peaceful, quiet, just sort of live and let live state. So when you have something like you guys show up, suited and booted and ready to boog, that tripped some alarms up there at the State House, and they got triggered.
Oh, it was trigger central. I was like, man, these we're starting to call them pine cones. It's like, I don't know. Somebody said the term on one of the pages, and it just kind of picked up from there. So calling them pine cones.
Yeah, they definitely need to calm down a little bit. But one of the things that really bothered me about the media representation of you guys is, this is a threat. They're out there trying to intimidate their legislators from doing their jobs. This is terrorism. I saw thrown around a little bit, and then of course
finger on the trigger thing. And I know my weapon safety rules like it's a religion.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody that feels obligated or compelled to do what you guys did should practice weapon safety to, because you are an ambassador.
Yes,
and that's
education is the key to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been taken away out of schools. It used to be common.
Yeah, it did. And unfortunately, it also used to be common in the household too, but the more cosmopolitan our society gets, the more we drift away from that sort of stuff. But I'm getting off on a jag here. So yeah, they where was I? What was I talking about?
Talking about the interviews.
Oh yeah. You had your collection of people that were comparing you guys to terrorists, saying that you were intimidating, but then you also had in the comment sections you had your typical peanut gallery of butters. I support the Second Amendment, but yeah, and I jumped in there. I typically don't comment on Facebook posts because I just don't have the fucking time to get into a 50 comment thread. I got shit to do. And, but I posted something up there that never got any replies. So either nobody saw it or it made its point. That you had people up there that were saying, I support the Second Amendment, but these guys showing up in their silly Hawaiian shirts and their web gear, this makes us look bad. And I said, what do you guys expect at this point? We've done the respectability politics, the suit and ties, the polished words for 100 years now. When it comes to this topic, because and it hasn't worked. At best, it's slowed the infringements down, but we've never won a single thing back once it's been taken.
Yes.
And any progress that we've made towards reconstituting the Second Amendment as it was originally intended has always come with some kind of a caveat to it. They take away concealed carry, they give you may issue concealed carry, they give you shall issue concealed carry, but you still have to apply for the license, that sort of thing. And they got background checks that you need to go through unless you jump through hoops and do all of this other stuff. But so we've done the suit and tie and the polished approach, and it hasn't worked. So it's finally time to do what you guys did, and it's show up and it's like, listen, we're not playing around. We're not, not one more inch. This is the line in the sand. Not one more inch. Step over it at your own peril. Mm-hmm. And the problem with their point of view is that they don't see that they are the aggressors in this dynamic. They are the ones that are coming at you with threats of confiscation and registration and being put on a list and everything. And all that you and me and everybody else that thinks like us is saying is, if you come for us, I will defend myself. And they take that as a threat.
Yeah, and basically they took offense from me showing up, exercising my rights first, though the real offense was their reaction.
Yeah.
And we've already got it figured out that the only reason why they're doing this is to create more felons, to create less voters, because most gun owners are conservative in some sort of way. The less voters for that, the more they could take over and implement their communist policies. And it's become apparent with, we look at the teachers union. You look at plenty of examples of their implementations already so far. But no more taking. We want all of our rights back.
Right.
All of our gun rights. Now that you've taken enough and we figured you out, we want all of our gun rights back now. Yeah,
absolutely. So you were down there and you got interviewed by some local news, and there's a clip out there. I don't know if Ben has it pulled up or not. I don't know if he was able to find it, but if he was, we might be able to play it. But local news was interviewing you, and it was just prima facie, just on its face, a hostile interview.
It's questions out of the freaking, straight swamp questions.
Right. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
She eye twitch in there too. Even I usually get an eye twitch when people ask me stupid crap.
Yeah. So she's up there, with a hostile interview, asking you some very leading questions, trying to poison the well, make you out to be an idiot and some type of gun humper, and you see all those comments too. I've never even dated a woman in a long-term relationship that is obsessed with my dick as the lefty gun grabbers are. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how oh, you got a tiny dick. No,
like,
I don't think so.
What does my outfit have to do with anything?
Yeah,
I want to be a little bit, maybe it would be less less scary looking, to them or whatnot, but yeah, it didn't really work out that way.
But yeah, one of your buddies that was standing next to you, she asked you what you had, and he came out with like a Yeah, picture perfect promotion board answer. Semi-automatic, air-cooled, lightweight, magazine-fed, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, damn, son, pin that E5. Promote above peers immediately.
I know. I was like, look at this guy. He's a CWO.
Yeah, there you go.
CWO 5 right there.
Yep.
Freaking gunner.
Yep. He rattled that off, and I think she kind of was like, what? Huh? Yeah. So that was a pretty good part of the whole thing was you held your own. I will say that, you know, she tried to get some leading questions out there. She tried to bait you, and you didn't take it. She what was it that you said? Something like, you know, your rights aren't subject to how you feel. Feelings don't trump rights.
Your emotions don't trump our rights.
Yeah.
You know, once you apply emotion to an emotionless document, it's compromised.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And there's I forget who it was that wrote it, but the explanation that I think put it best was something like God-given rights are not subject to the fires of emotion or the democratic process. You know,
Yes.
these are you know, we oftentimes say God-given, which is, you know, it kind of has a bad smell to
Yeah, a lot of people, you know, out there with it really just creator given, like you're put here. And honestly, that's what the definition of a republic. You know, there's rights that can't be taken. There's a certain portion of rights that just can't be touched. And when you start touching that, you're infringing on a republic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a reason.
Right. And we are a republic, which is something that I think a lot of people seem to miss out on. You're always hearing about our democracy, our democracy, our democracy. And it's kind of pissing into the wind to be like, no, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And they're just like, huh?
Yeah, because democracy is it instantly leads to dictatorship. Doesn't matter how long, it instantly leads to it at some point. I mean, look at Canada. That's a democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it may take a generation or two, or it may happen in a single generation, but you're always going to end up down the road. Once you go into that pure democracy, you're going to find someone who has the charisma, or they say the right words, where everybody wants to follow them and give them ultimate power. And it doesn't matter if it's a left-wing person or a right-wing person. You know, as much as it sickens me, I've seen some comments in social media posts where these idiot boomers are going to say stupid shit like I've never been one to advocate for any kind of dictatorship until Trump came along, and I'm just like, oh.
No, it's like, look, never be a pro-Trumper, never be a never-Trumper. Always be skeptical of every politician.
Exactly.
Every time. Always.
And we live in this this black and white world where you have these people that are like, oh, if you're against anti-fascists, you must be pro-fascist. It's like, no, I just don't like a bunch of neo-Bolsheviks beating the shit out of people and burning cities down. Yes. That's where I stand. It's like, I don't like fascism and I don't like communism. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, we're not supposed to love or hate history. We're supposed to respect it.
Yes, and the same thing goes with Trump or any of the other Democrats. When they do good, I'll applaud it. When they do bad, I'll criticize it, and I'll take each thing on a case-by-case scenario.
Oh, yeah, which is, I thought that would be an instant 100% for everybody to even, call it big brain. Use your big brain.
Right. People are not using their big brain these days. They want black and white dichotomies. If you're not for us, you're against us, because it's easier that way for them. They don't have to think.
Yeah. Which is just, it's disgrace. I mean, come on. That's what separates us from the beasts.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so give us a little bit of an update. You went down there and you protested LB58 and 816. Did they go anywhere?
Actually, yeah, they did. They told us that they were shot down, and that was a complete lie.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
LB58 actually was still going, so I spread the news about that and said that our senators are liars, and I posted the link to it. And well, it turns out that senator, the author of that bill, he did not show up to work that next day, which ended up tabling the bill. So it takes 30% vote for that to come back. So it's still lingering around. And as for LB 816, I'm not exactly sure where that's flying around anywhere. I'm not sure what's going on with that yet, but it only takes Lincoln and Omaha to bring back the LB 58. That's it. That's how bad it's gotten in Nebraska. And they want to add more senators to this region.
Unacceptable.
They want to destroy the West's, vote, period.
So, there's a couple of counties out there. Ben just reminded me of this in our chat. There's a couple of counties out west. I think it's Morrill and one other. I think Cherry County, actually. That they're sanctuary counties now. Do you see this spreading a little bit further east? And Scottsbluff County.
I had talked to a few people, and they said they tried to bring it to the sheriffs, and a lot of the sheriffs are just dismissing it because they think that those bills were dropped too.
Okay.
Hopefully, the sheriffs are watching this and wake up. Wake up. Your job is to, you were voted into the office you are in. Listen to your freaking constituents. All right, it's gonna be a freaking nightmare if you don't.
Yep. I think it was 2012 or 2013 when we had something similar where we had a gun rights rally at the Lincoln Capitol, and I gave a speech up there, and the core of my speech was about how the county sheriff, is the highest authority law enforcement officer in the country, more than the attorney general, more than the president, more than the local city cops or any of that thing. Your local county sheriff has more authority than the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, any of these other law enforcement agencies, because your county sheriff is elected by the people and therefore accountable to the people, whereas the FBI, ATF, and all those other alphabet agencies are appointed bureaucrats, and they're only accountable to the people who appointed them.
Yeah, they're just alphabet boys.
Yeah, exactly. And there's organizations out there like Richard Mack's Constitutional Sheriff's Association that does a lot of good outreach. I haven't checked in on them in a long time.
I have. I try to keep in contact because when it comes down to it, the constitutional sheriffs are the only ones that can actually be with citizens to arrest politicians.
Right.
They're the only ones because they are the direct contact of those citizens to arrest the politicians. And politicians know this too. They just try to play stupid.
Yeah, it's a very, very similar situation to something like jury nullification, where they're fully 100%
review.
Yeah, it's fully 100% in their mind. They just don't want you to know about it because
that's why you can't find it on the internet either. There's one guy that was trying to push it around. It was I think MB Mobley or something like that. I have him on my Facebook page, but he's been trying to push this around that Republic review overrides all judicial review because we are the people.
Mm-hmm.
Judicial review is also unconstitutional. How can an elected by the elected decide what is and isn't constitutional? And they don't want to win that either. They, they're like, well, we vote to make sure that they're good. Yeah, you, not us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of the way that our court system works is that we've allowed. How do I word this? We've allowed. Oh, that's not just that. It's the people have allowed them to just have free reign on little stuff for so long that it's kind of just fallen out of the public memory. Now that the big stuff, the stuff that actually matters, is starting to come up, they're taking the reins in jurisdiction that they don't have jurisdiction in.
Yes.
And so they're ruling on things that they don't don't particularly have any authority to rule on, but because they've just ruled on the little piddly stuff for 150 years, people just don't know. That's like, hey, you don't have the authority to be making rulings on what is and is not constitutional on a yeah, exactly, on something that's in the Bill of Rights.
And even, there are some other actual amendments that say there is no statute defining whether Congress can add to it or not, meaning Congress can't. And in the 10th Amendment, the state is also unable to do what Congress is unable to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the state can amend certain things, as long as it doesn't touch whatever Congress can't touch. Congress isn't supposed to be touching the Bill of Rights or like the 14th Amendment. They can't touch that.
All right. Well, I mean, they can. That's why it's an amendment. But that's why the amendment process in this country is so very, very difficult to put an amendment through. It's and it's just like a prohibition of alcohol versus the drug war, or making laws against certain types of guns or anything like that. Again, it's Congress and the courts have been making laws about all these little piddly things for years that people have forgotten that they're not supposed to touch these inalienable rights. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. It doesn't mean, even if you got like a 90% constitutional, or a congressional majority, and you write a law, the words supreme law of the land, you would think mean something, but apparently it means fuck all.
Yeah. Yeah, no step on snake. Okay.
Exactly. So, getting back to the sanctuary county movement, it's picking up a little bit of steam. We got a few. Yeah, we got a few. One thing that I think would be funny, but I don't see it ever picking up any steam, at least not in this state, would be a secession movement. And not a secession movement from the United States, but a secession. Huh?
Just like a nullification of the federal laws.
No, not necessarily. I mean, that would be something like Kansas and Montana have done. That would be one approach. But I'm talking about like splitting the state into two separate states.
Yeah, I gotta move then.
Yeah, like Western Nebraska splits away from Lincoln and Omaha, and they can have their own little state, or they get absorbed into Iowa, and you can have all of you can have all that mess. Or there's lots of local, I guess, secession movement kind of puts a bad taste in people's mouths because it still harkens back to the Civil War and seceding from the United States. But state level secession, splitting states, redrawing state boundaries, this is something that most people look at like, oh, we can't do that. The 50 states, indivisible. It's like, no, it's really not.
It's been divided by polarizing politics.
Exactly. That's how West Virginia became a state when it was carved off of Virginia. Was as Abraham Lincoln wanting to do some senatorial shenanigans, but again, it's there are some western counties in Virginia today that want to secede from Virginia and join West Virginia. Yes. You have the Greater Idaho movement that wants to take up a large chunk of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, and create kind of a redoubt of conservative values in the Pacific Northwest. You got the Calexit movement that at times they want to split California into numerous states, or they want to have their own country because they let them. They'll die out. Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
We'll finally drop it off into the ocean or something.
Yeah. We made some very bad jokes when the Calexit movement really kicked off. I'm like, I'm not going to repeat it. We're part of a network.
You're making
part of a network now. Yeah, and so I just said, after they die out in a couple of generations, you just bulldozed the mountains of human feces and used hypodermic needles in the San Francisco Bay, and boom, new beachfront property.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, so secession movement is something that at times it has its ebbs and flows.
Yeah. I think
Where
people are just looking for a peaceful way around it, really.
right, yes, and that I think would be the most peaceful way would be to, if not split up into smaller countries, at least just start redrawing state lines so that you can have this sort of political balkanization. This of course may come with some very negative side effects where you have like super single party rule states, and then nothing gets done at the national level because, but
Yeah.
the founders would say that's not a bug, that's a feature.
They're like, oh, we're going to have 2 different countries inside a country all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you can also take a look at what happened to Czechoslovakia after the Cold War. They had what they called the Velvet Divorce, where Czechoslovakia broke into the Czech Republic and the Republic of Slovakia. They did it peacefully because they just had, differences, regional differences in the way they wanted to run their politics and run their states. And they said, hey, let's just, right here, draw a boundary, 2 separate nations, shake hands. It's been real. It's been fun, but it ain't been real fun. Peace out.
Or it could be something bad like North Korea, South Korea, or North Vietnam, South Vietnam. It's just one of those things that nobody can read the future.
No.
And to have innocents die is just not the way to go.
No. And unfortunately, unfortunately, the people in power, I'm not going to ascribe malicious motivations to them, like they just want people. They want it to be a bloodbath.
It just feels that way.
Yeah, it does feel that way sometimes, but I think that they just enjoy the amount of power and the fact that this country, the United States, is an incredibly rich, incredibly powerful, incredibly, as a unified body, is the sole remaining superpower of the world. And if there was any type of state lines being redrawn, the economy would be thrown into a tizzy. And if there's any type of a velvet divorce type of situation where the nation split into 2 or smaller groups, then suddenly they lose a great deal of power. And I don't think they want to go for that.
No, because I have a feeling if they try to do that, you got to imagine all the laws for certain things that can't cross state borders,
Mm-hmm.
And you got to imagine like, a lot of the farming communities they'd be like, well, when have you helped us out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of things that are just kind of a throw in the dark. You can't really tell what would happen, but it's something to think about at least. To be aware of. And,
yeah, and it's also one of those things where if we don't do something is going to happen to us. If that makes any type of sense, if they keep trying to play these to play the urban versus rural, the people who just want to be left alone versus the moral busybodies that just can't help but insert themselves into everybody else's life in order just to keep this facade of the entity that we know as the United States going, something's going to give.
Yeah.
The pressure cannot be contained. Where there's a video I watched a couple of days ago, really, really good, by a commentator named Bill Whittle. And he was like, he was saying that you never see a bunch of farmers from out in the hinterlands make the trek into the city to try and tell the city people how they should live.
No.
But you always see the people in the urban centers come out and try to, boss people around. And if they're not doing it in person, they're doing it via the mechanisms of the state. And that's the that's the ideological divide that we have going on in this country right now. Is the busybodies, the authoritarian control freaks, and the people that just want to be left alone.
Yeah, and I'm like I said, I'm trying to be as loud and proud as I can for all those people that so they can be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see what comes of it. Hopefully, it's a big, the movement grows, and hopefully we finally get stuff done about this. We finally get more of our rights back instead of more of our rights taken, because it's just garbage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I've always tried to tell people is that open carry society is a polite society.
Exactly.
What criminal is going to act out when he sees guns everywhere? He'd be like, oh, maybe I should be a little bit more. Maybe he'll join society.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Stop being a criminal.
Or take himself away from it.
Yeah.
Self-segregate.
Go away kind of thing, like find a different state that allows that kind of crap or something. Chicago.
I hear California is wonderful year-round as far as the weather goes.
South California is just North California is very, like, I talked to a lot of people from there. They're very, very, just like us here in Nebraska. They're very for the rights. They're extremely angry at their state. There's atrocities happening across the entire state on human rights and all that kind of stuff. Right now they're working with the medical atrocities, and it's just being overlooked because a lot of people, they're like, well, that's California. They're already long gone, but they're still a part of the United States. They still vote. They're still part of our federal mandate. They still count as a vote. Yeah, and actually a large portion.
Very large portion. They've got like 53 representatives in the
58,
House.
I think.
58. Yeah, it's a crazy amount of power that they have out there. So just simply discounting them out of hand because that's California. Who cares what they think is a very unwise move.
Yeah, but there's also a bigger movement happening where a lot of people are getting communities together, making like quad cons and all that kind of stuff thrown together, and just staying off grid and telling the state to screw off. We are a town of guns.
Yeah,
especially out in Pennsylvania with the Amish are definitely giving the idea out from different states and all that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of a low key, but it's building.
Yeah, that's one of the things that this country was founded on. Small, like-minded communities getting together, trading amongst themselves, but for the most part, leaving each other alone. And that might be one of the ways that we can pull this whole thing out without any type of bloodshed or burning the whole thing down. Is people just kind of go back to their corners, take a breather, figure themselves out, get their own lives squared away before you go rushing back in and trying to bully other people with the mechanisms of the state.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have to look towards original meaning. If you look towards the original meaning to the words in the Constitution, that's where you'll find the answers. They say it's a evolving document or with the times, but honestly, if you really want to find out what they truly meant, you got to be within the dictionaries that they were reading. Mm-hmm. You will find that, wow, keep means to conceal,
Yep.
So the right to conceal and openly carry any weapon is literally what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see, they tricked us. Man.
Yeah. The English language is a very tricky language. The meaning of words changes throughout the years, and then if you got somebody who's ambitious enough to try and seize power by playing linguistic tricks, they will.
1968, 1934 was the worst time.
Yep. All right, so I think we're about to wrap it up here. We're approaching an hour, so I feel kind of bad because I did most of the talking here. So why don't you
I'll do a shout out to all the Marines out there. All right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got a few watching. So why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of a gestalt there, break it on down, and just you got the floor for the next couple of minutes.
All right. Well, keep fighting. There's definitely some things that I post on my Facebook page that will help us. A lot of it you can actually delete some of the certain things that say like my state or whatnot and actually apply it to your own states, because it's almost directly reflective to every state in the United States. And this could be the only way to actually combat our actual state legally. Any state in the actual country that is trying hard to actually infringe upon our rights, which honestly is most states besides maybe Montana and was it Wyoming and Kansas?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, those were like the only two states. And to always look for original meaning when you actually look at older documents, because that will define it exactly as the intention was. So like I said, with using older dictionaries, using reading the actual Federalist Papers to find out their intentions behind the words, just knowing that the Constitution is not a document by the government. It's a treaty with the people. It's a treaty with us, and they're not treating us correctly. They're actually changing that treaty over and over until they're going to push it too far. And when that happens, it's just not going to be a pretty day. And nobody wants to see that kind of crap happen. We got families. I got a pregnant wife. It's just due in August. It's a boy. I did well.
So it's mine.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. Little shout out to my new shotgun I got yesterday. A little Mossberg 500. Friggin' nice little home defense. And definitely keep training, because teach your kids, because that teaching is going to reflect through their life. They're going to be able to handle a weapon correctly. They're going to be able to teach their children. They're going to be able to understand, that arms means any weapon of offense, but also any armor of defense. It's just you have to have both. What if Russia came over here? What if China? I don't think China's going to be doing much for for a little while. They've been drinking too much Corona, so.
Yeah, but got the Kung flu.
Getting that, the Kung flu.
Yeah.
But it's the education is the key. Honestly, education is the key. Without it, that's why we are here today, because they've taken that education out. That's why we're in the war on drugs. They don't teach kids about drugs anymore in school. The DARE program is gone. That was here in Nebraska. Honestly, if drugs were all illegal, it would take the rage out of all. Then the education with it before they even, are witness to any of that kind of stuff. Then they'd be like, oh, well, it could do that to you. That's not good. So it's definitely all about that. The rage is gone. You'd actually have way less felons and these so-called non-violent offenders, which is just another joke to take away our rights. They're just trying to take away votes. That's all they're trying to do.
Yep, that's a good little breakdown there. All right, so I think we're going to call her a night here. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm very glad that I reached out to you and got you on a little show here. This was a very good talk. Yeah, like you said, man, keep fighting. Keep up the good fight.
I won't stop.
Yep. Pay attention. Don't just pay attention to what's going on the national level. I myself have that problem where I always want to take a look at what shenanigans Washington D.C. is up to, and I neglect what's happening at the state level, and shit like what happened down in Lincoln with you guys happens, and I'm sitting there in my underpants on a Saturday morning going, oh shit, I should be there.
Oh man. I was pretty much almost in my underpants. I mean,
yeah.
All right, it's a little bit less, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right, everybody. So our guest tonight was Brett Hendrix of Omaha. He was the man of infamy at the Lincoln Capitol, protesting LB58 and 816. Yep, there we go. There's a couple of handsome goddamn men right there.
Hoorah. Lance Corporal Underground, yo. People know.
The E4 Mafia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Whatever.
Yep. So anyways, our website, we're part of the Think Liberty Network. That's think-liberty.com. We are anywhere that podcasts are broadcast. Apple, iTunes, SoundCloud, all those fun places. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, share it to all your friends if you enjoyed what you had tonight. And remember, everybody, stay strapped or get clapped.